This book looked like, by the way, Adriana's Angels. Very colorful, very nice. So today we begin with the Gospel of Luke. It's a new year and a new Gospel reading. And the Gospel of Luke begins with one of my favorite characters in all the Bible. Possibly because I'm a lot like that character, at least I think. Because there are some Saturday nights when me and plenty of other preachers have nightmares. Nightmares that when we show up on Sunday morning, we're going to show up late or show up at the wrong church. And there's already somebody preaching instead of us. Or we have a nightmare that we're still in our nightgown or something, right? Our pajamas. Or we have a nightmare that when we speak, the words come just not out right. And we really struggle. Or a nightmare that we can't speak at all. Zechariah, the old priest in the Gospel of Luke, as it begins, loses his speech. The religious authority, the religious person, loses his ability to speak. That's how the Gospel of Luke begins. It says that Zechariah and Elizabeth are righteous and they've done wonderful things, that they are descendants of priests and priests and priests in the order of Aaron, in the order of Levi. One of these days when I go to a counselor and I say, on Saturday nights especially, I have nightmares, and the counselor says, well, tell me more about this. And I'll say, well, I come from a long line of pastors. My dad's a Lutheran pastor, and his dad, and his dad, and his dad, and the nightmares just happen to run in the family. Zechariah may have had that same concern. But Zechariah, as the story unfolds, draws the short straw. They cast lots. He and the other priests. They're either rolling dice or casting sticks, and there's symbols on those that say who gets to do what on particular days of the season. And Zechariah draws a straw that says he has to get up early on Sunday morning to go light the incense in the temple when he could be sleeping late on a cold winter morning. He gets to go light the incense to cover up the stink of all the goat sacrifices that have been going on all night long. So he goes in and he's praying the prayer in the temple. Old Zechariah, let my prayer come before you as incense. The lifting up my hands as an evening sacrifice. Let my prayer come before you. And Zechariah is praying the prayers of the Psalms. My soul waits for you as I wait for the morning, O God. My soul waits for you. Praying the prayer of the Psalms of waiting for God, of hoping for God, of begging for God's presence, even to come and ransom captive Israel, as we sang a while ago, because they were captive. And Zechariah is in there praying and lighting incense when all of a sudden the priest, who should be by himself, feels a presence, notices that someone else is there, and it's what? An angel of the Lord. Zechariah is scared, but the angel says, do not be afraid. That's what angels say. And then the angel says, hey, Zech, I got some more news. It rhymes with Keck, by the way. Keck and Zech. That's why I like him. I got some more news for you. You and your old wife, Lizzie. You mind if I call her Lizzie? Oh, never mind. You're going to have a baby. You're going to have a baby boy. He's going to be pretty incredible. It's going to be good news for everybody. And this baby boy is going to point parents like you guys to their children. Point parents so that they can see their children again like God sees their children. Point parents to their children so that the parents can teach the child the stories and the love of God. You got that, Zech? And Zech is going, huh? What? Who are you? I'm not so sure I'm buying into this. And then the angel goes on to say, you're going to treat your baby boy like Samson. You remember Samson, don't you? He's chapter 8 of the story, by the way, if you're reading the story. Chapter 8. You remember Samson? Huh? The one with the long hair and the muscles. You remember Samson, don't you? Zech, the one with Delilah? Yeah, of course, Zech. The one, Samson and Delilah. You can't have one without the other, can you? Treat him like Samson. He's going to be a Nazirite. Don't let any strong drink or wine come near him. Don't cut his hair. Allow him to grow up big and strong and powerful for God. This is who your child is going to be. And Zechariah, old Zechariah, lighting incense candles, says, I'm old. how can this be? How can I be so sure? I'm not so sure that this is going to happen. He's been praying all his life for God to ransom Israel. He and Elizabeth had been praying for a child, and now they have good news, and he says, I'm old. What kind of response is that? Certainly, Angel Gabriel found Mary, young Mary, who said, let it be with me according to your word, as soon as Angel Gabriel told Mary. As soon as Angel Gabriel told Mary, she said, all things are possible with God. This is great. What does old Zach say? I'm old. I doubt it. I've seen life. Zach had a failure of imagination, had a habit of hopelessness. Nothing new was under the sun. Didn't trust or believe this angel. Sometimes some of us are old like Zechariah. Sometimes we just say, how can this be? I'm not so sure this can really happen. My imagination can't see that far into the future of what a change might look like. The angel Gabriel said to Zechariah, you may see yourself as old, that little printed part of the Bible that we have in your bulletin today. You may see yourself as old, but I see myself standing in the presence of God, sharing good news with you. How do you see yourself? You see yourself old like Zechariah? Not even God can do something new in your life or in your world. Do you see yourself more like Mary, who says, let it be with me, and is all excited about the possibilities that tomorrow might bring? Do you see yourself as an angel Gabriel, who sometimes shares good news with others? Kind of like this coming Tuesday when our hands-on group and others are heading to Cherokee, Living Waters Lutheran Church, and they're going to share good news and baby blankets and books, things that you have given and blessed them with so that we may bless others with. And we know the pastor's wife there, Lisa, how excited she always is and how excited she will be to receive this gift. She'll say, yes, thank you all. This is incredible. And she'll treat you all for lunch. I can't speak for Pastor Jack Russell over there. He might be like Zechariah. Oh, I'm old. Lisa, you take care of it. Either way, I'm sure they will be very receptive to this gift. How are you receptive to God's gift this Advent? To God's gift of good news, of possibilities, of hope. Eventually, Zechariah, because of his doubt, because of his failure to believe, because of his failure of imagination, because of his habit of hopelessness, he gets made mute. The angel says, just for that, no talking for you for at least 9 months. And for 9 months, he watched his wife's womb grow. He watched the possibilities of God's womb grow, and he couldn't speak. And that was grace, because he couldn't compound the problems he had already created. But it was also a time for him to be silent and to reflect upon what God possibly can do, about what God can possibly do. And at the end of 9 months, after his baby is born, he speaks. In fact, he doesn't even speak. He rejoices. He sings a beautiful, incredible song about what God can do. Sometimes silence is important. Amazing Grace by Kathleen Norris, and then I'll be quiet. She talks about being a teacher and getting the kids to yell and scream as loud as they can for a few seconds or for a few minutes, and then she holds up her hand and they get quiet. And eventually the kids really enjoyed the opportunity to be quiet, to be silent. And their creative imaginations soared, and they would say, let's do it again. And then some kids said, it's scary. It's scary when it's quiet. But then she said, what interested me about my experiment was the way in which making silence liberated the imagination of so many children. Very few wrote with any originality about making noise. Most of their images were cliches about making noise. It sounded like, we sound like a herd of elephants. But silence was another matter. Their images often had a depth and maturity that was unlike anything else they wrote. One boy came up with an image of strength as being as slow and silent as a tree. Another child wrote that silence is me, sleeping, waiting to wake up. Silence is a tree spreading its branches to the sun. In a parochial school, not a private church school, but a parochial school, one third grader's poem turned into a prayer. Silence is spiders spinning their webs. It's like a silkworm making silk. Lord, help me to know when to be silent. And in a tiny town in western North Dakota, a little girl offered a gem of spiritual wisdom that I find myself returning to when my life becomes too noisy and distractions overwhelm me. She writes, "Silence reminds me to take my soul with me wherever I go." Maybe silence is a good way to begin this Advent season. Maybe silence like Zechariah, to ponder anew what the Almighty can do. Silence with fear, with trembling of God's presence. Silence, silent prayer, silent hoping, silent dreaming, silent imagining.